But I will tell you that one of the things I like doing more than anything else is visiting our campuses and talking about those things that matter. And I'm just going to spend a few minutes because I want to tell you that where I come from on this very conversation. By the way, we're called what? What kind of education are we? Higher. Who said that? You should not go anywhere. You're smart. We're higher education. The argument is that if we're higher education, we need to think higher, act higher, and do higher, right? We're not lower education. We're higher education. When we talk about higher order thinking, we talk about infusing that throughout what we do. I mean, many of the QEPs around the country, you know, or for SACS region anyway, but even in other places where they don't call it QEP, everybody's focusing on critical thinking, creative thinking. Everybody's focusing on those items. Can someone tell me why? Because in the last 10 years, those have become the buzzwords for quote unquote higher education. Why? 21st century principles and so on. Now my argument is that's right, but my argument is, isn't that why we were created in the first place? Right? It shouldn't be 21st century, it should have been 20th, 19th, however long we've been in existence. We're here to challenge people to learn from all aspects, right? We're here to not just necessarily get people to the finish line alone, we're here to try to get people to the finish line and have knowledge once they get there, and be engaged in higher order process while they're getting there. Let me tell you a little bit more. I'm giving you a preamble of where I'm going to kind of get this. How many of you know where I'm originally from? I tell this story, and I've told it here before, so I know I'm repeating myself. I am old, but I do remember. But I like to start this conversation with a story because it may give you a little bit about how I got involved in this conversation. Well, first of all, before we get started, what was the first thing you thought when you saw me? Some of you have seen me before, so you maybe have had the repeated thought, but what was the first thing you thought when you saw me? Okay, students. What'd you say? Yeah. Taller than what you expected? Did somehow I sound like short? No? Okay, I'm just checking. I'm in higher education. I have to ask questions. I want clarification. Yeah, okay. What else did you think?
I thought that you were engaging people. You were interacting with folks. So
okay.
That was kind of the first impression.
Yeah, first impressions matter, right? That's one of the reasons why I'm asking you this. I won't spend a long time on this because I know you don't want to stay here all evening with me. But what else did you think?
Well, I knew you were one of the speakers. I mean, you looked executive when I first saw you, but I knew who you were. But you looked the part.
I looked the part?
So, yeah.
Yeah. You should see me with my glasses on. Yeah. I look even taller. What else? Why am I asking you this question other than talking about so often first impressions a student have of you will determine how much they learn, right? If you don't spend some time doing something about it. Yes?
So I'm not exactly sure where you're going, but this is just baseline basic.
Okay.
When I first saw you, I saw your picture in the email, and I was like, oh, a black man.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was really like, okay, what is he going to talk about? Because I don't see many pictures of black men on correspondence at first.
Yeah. I was wondering if everybody figured that out. Yeah, I'm a black man, except I did this DNA testing, you know. Gates is going out saying, find out where you're from. If you're African American, find out where you're from, do this DNA stuff. I did. It was really cool. I did my DNA stuff and it came back, telling you the honest truth. And the one I did gives you 5 big categories. It gives you a lot of little stuff under, but 5 big categories that talks about where you're from. And it goes to the lineage of both sides of your family, obviously. And I found out, and it gives you from the strongest to the weakest, the strongest DNA down to the weakest. So think of it that way. Guess what? Where the country. Excuse me. Well, that's a continent, but close. Yeah, that's right. It was Europe, and it was Scotland, number 1. Wow, we shouldn't be surprised by that if we know anything, right? We shouldn't be surprised. Number two, guess, really freaked me out because I didn't know this. Scotland, I kind of figured, Scotch-Irish, that made sense. Scotch-Irish are the black Irish, by the way, for those that don't know. I mean, seriously, if you know anything about history. I mean, am I right? Yeah, you know, those folks they took over and put in Northern Ireland and Scottish poor people, but it doesn't matter. Number two, my grandmother had really kind of, it was white hair, but kind of long, beautiful white hair. My mother had very wavy hair. And I always thought, I said, well, I'm sure she's part Indian. That's what we all say, right? We used to not admit that 100 years ago, by the way. We didn't want to say it then. But part Indian. But I found out, number two, Puerto Rico. Had no idea. It took me by surprise. Number three, Australia. Wow. Number four, I didn't even get into real African stuff till number four, which was Tunisia, Northern Africa. And then the Sudan was my fifth. So I've been having a racial identity issue ever since I found that out. But I am an African-American man. Many years ago, I was a professor at the University of Missouri, and I was invited to go a little bit farther north to give an end-note speech at a conference. And I tell people now I'm so popular, I only do keynotes. But this was a medical, you can laugh, by the way. That was really funny, at least in my world. Everybody else laughs. But I was there to talk to a bunch of hospital administrators, and back in the 90s, there were all this information coming out that said that physicians who thought that they were providing equitable health care through independent research had found out that they were not. And so I was talking to a bunch of hospital administrators about this, and it was about 250, 275 or so at this conference. And the person who introduced me didn't do nearly as well as your president because it was not done on purpose not to introduce me. They said, this is Dr. Aaron Thompson from the University of Missouri. He's here to talk about culturally competent healthcare. That's all it was said. So I got up and I said, if I'm going to speak with you for the next hour or so, it's only fair that you know something about me, because we know that as teachers, if we're not able to share a little bit about who we are, it's kind of hard to get them engaged, right? We know that. We know it's so much about engagement. By the way, the number one factor in student success is faculty engaged with the student in and out of the classroom. Who knew that? Number one. So I said it's only fair that we're going to get engaged in this conversation to move from point A to point B that you find out a little bit about me. So I want you to figure out where you think I'm from. Do I have any linguistic folk in the room? Anybody? You're kind of that? Well, if you know anything about it, you know that if you were born in a region of a country, no matter where the country is at, if you stayed there from 0 to 14 or 15, you will always carry the dialect of that region. How many of you knew that? Yeah. So I asked the question in that room. I said, I will tell you, I told them this first as a preamble. I was born someplace and I stayed there till age 18. Never moved more than a mile from where I was born. And I said, I want you to figure out where I'm from. And this goes back to the first impression again. So I said, how many of you think I'm from the north? By the way, how many of you know where I'm from in this room? You can't say anything. Don't participate. How many of you think I'm originally from the north?
How do you define the north?
North, you define it. Let's use only, whatever. Anything above the Mason-Dixon line. How about that? Yeah, one? Yeah.
Unless it's Florida.
Unless it's Florida. So I said, how many of you believe I'm from the south? Hardly no one raised their hands. Why do you think so? Yeah, when I asked that audience about why did they think I was from the north, they said, well, because you kind of sound like you could be from the north, right? I asked, how many of you believe I'm from the south? No one raised their hands, and I said, why not? And what did they say? You don't have a southern accent. I said, okay, I can go with that. And I said, okay, let's go a little bit farther. And I went through the Northeast and so on, but I got down, to make a long story short, to the Midwest. I said, how many of you believe I'm from the Midwest? Almost everybody raised their hands. Why?
You
speak fairly standard Midwestern.
Yeah, the Midwesterners believe they're dialectless, right? That they don't have dialects. And not only that, they knew just a little bit about me that could have gotten them in trouble. This is the mistake we make as faculty all the time. We think we know somebody based on the way they look or what they say, and we base a lot of what we do based on that. Did you know that? They knew a little bit about me. What did they know that would make them think I could also be from the Midwest other than my lack of dialect? That's right. Missouri was in their mind. I said, okay, let me ask you to take a leap. And this is what I'm going to do tonight because we've got such a short time and I don't have a long time to take you where I would love to have fun with you to take you because I'm a teacher at heart. If you can't tell, love teaching. Love being a faculty member. I still am a tenured full professor at one of the universities, by the way. I said, I want you to take a leap with me and believe that I'm from the South. How many can do that? And they raised their hand and said, well, we can do that. You could be from Atlanta where no Southerners live anymore, or Florida. You know, we can go with that. I said, okay, that was too easy. Let me ask you to take another leap with me. Not only believe that I'm from the South, but I'm from Kentucky. Did they have a harder time? Yeah, they had a harder time. Why? By the way, I told him I could be lying to him just to prove a point. I could be lying to you just to prove a point. They had a harder time, and two people on the front row, they were laughing. I said, what are you guys laughing at? They said, well, you can't be from Kentucky, you're wearing shoes, you know? I said, aw. So often when we say those kinds of jokes, they have a deep-seated sense of reality to us. I said, why don't you believe I'm from Kentucky? What did they tell me? You don't sound like it. You're highly educated, and so on. I said, okay, let's take another leap. Not only believe that I'm from the South and from Kentucky, but I'm from Eastern Kentucky, Central Appalachia. Could they believe that? No one in that room believed that. How many of you believe that? Yeah. Why do you believe it?
Because it's not really the South, so you wouldn't have, people I know from East Kentucky don't have Southern accents.
Well, they have an accent, though. Am I right? It may not be Southern, but it's an accent. Am I right? We can't deny that. Yeah. They had a harder time believing it, not only for that reason. That was number one. They said, well, you surely don't sound like it. What other reasons did they have? Come on. What are the stereotypes? Yeah, poor. I didn't look poor. Someone said you're dressed nicely. You can't be from Eastern Kentucky. What else? Oh yeah, all kinds of people assume that. There's no black people in Eastern Kentucky. A lot of people do assume that, even in Kentucky. Did you know that? Then you're highly educated. We're known as not an educated population in Eastern Kentucky. Students are bringing you this stuff all the time. We still have gaps in Kentucky. I don't know if you know that. And the gap just so happens operates itself around underrepresented, low income. Regionally, there's tons of gaps. There's gaps around gender, men, in many cases, as far as educational attainment, women when it comes to paying. There's all kinds of gaps out here. But the gap I'm going to talk about today, in many ways, are gaps all across the board. If we can really understand all the things we need to do in a continuous improvement model as faculty, then we can address all the folk where they're coming from. I am from Eastern Kentucky. I'm from Clay County, Kentucky. I was born in a log cabin. My father was an illiterate coal miner. Mother had an 8th grade education. I was first generation high school, college, graduate school. You keep on going. Point being is that so often we don't realize the power we have. And I know we say this as a cliche, the power that education have, the power that professors have. I mean, but the reality of it all is, it is power. I'm a professor now because of a professor. What I hope we really take in this conversation is about how we apply who we are in order to understand that we are very much the key part of a continuous improvement, not only for our students, but for the university. Talk about 21st century, we're a key component of that, right? Any questions you want to ask me before I got started? I have started, if you don't know. Anything? Okay, let me see if I can make this thing work. Perspectives. It's really kind of interesting. Question I ask often, the president posed a little bit of it a second ago. How many of you believe in diversity? Raise your hand. How many of you value diversity? How many of you are almost afraid to raise your hand because you think I'm tricky? No. Give me the definition of diversity. If you believe in it and value it, what is it? Think about that for a second. That's tough, right? That's tough. We use diversity almost as a cliche. It's something cool to believe in it, it's something cool to value it, it's something else when we try to employ it, right? That's tougher. Now, don't feel bad, it's tough for most of us. We'll talk about diversity today, but I'm also going to talk about how, now I'm going to have to get used to my Britney Spears microphone here. But as a faculty member, we expect our students to have a set of competencies. That's what we want them to have before they graduate. You're going to hear me argue this is one of the most powerful competencies that crosses all realms of what we say we believe. And I'm going to prove it to you tonight. And I'm going to say that to you right now so you can challenge me in the end if I haven't. Because my argument is that we all need to walk out with something new. I love learning. How many of you really love learning, seriously? I'm not just asking you this as a rallying point either. If you're a good faculty member, you will love learning. Because you cannot be good. You cannot be a good teacher. You cannot be a good purveyor of learning unless you love it yourself. It's impossible, am I right? You can't, if you don't understand it or don't know how to do it, you can't purvey it. It's impossible. And I would love for someone to prove me wrong with that too, by the way. Future of America, we know about it. I'm not going to spend a long time on it. It's changing. The demographics are changing. It's already changed. It's happening fast. The biggest change in our demographics will happen with our ethnic diversity around Latinos. Another big change that's happening was with our gay and lesbian population. Not that we have more, but it's freer to say more, right? So it's happening. What do we need to do first in order to be a good purveyor of learning is to figure out exactly the learning process. And you know this already, so this is Learning 101. I understand that. And I promise you I'm not being pejorative to such a smart group of people. I learned a long time ago it doesn't work. And I want you to think of this as a self-improvement model, but it's also a model that I've used now for a long time. They made me copyright it in 2008. But the publishers did. But this is also a continuous improvement model for curriculum building and for faculty development. I want you to remember that. Start off with awareness. We know that in order to really understand how you need to improve, you need to understand, challenge yourself. You need to be able to challenge yourself to figure out what you believe. You have to know what you believe. Most of you in this room, how many in this room are either Republican, Democrat, or independent, or some formal political party? Raise your hand. I can do the same with religion, by the way, and those are the two areas that most people say that they know exactly what they believe, why they believe it, and will be willing to fight you for it. Am I right? We see a lot of it happening all the time. But I promise you that very few people have ever read the platform of their political party. You want to bet me? I bet they get most of their information and beliefs not on their own, but from what their parents were, or from some guy on TV that gave you a 20-second commercial. It's, oh yeah, that's what I am. We so often, even the things that we deeply believe, is based on a variety of other circumstances that are not fact. Based on Prejudice? Based on stereotyping? Maybe based on just full of, I mean, sociologists in here? Maybe based on false consciousness, as Marx would say, right? That you've got somebody more powerful, quote unquote, than you, convincing you believe something you don't. So the first one is awareness. The first stage of what you need to do in order to get to a higher order thinking mechanism is to self-evaluate, self-actualize, know why you believe whatever you believe. Know that if somehow you are leaving somebody behind in the class, you need to challenge yourself to find out why. Why is that happening? What is happening here that would make that particular student not be successful? You're going to also hear me argue that if you're going to teach diversity, and it should be infused in your curriculum, for a freshman in college. By the way, what is the one thing freshmen in college have in common? The one item that they have in common. No matter if they're high performing academically coming out of high school or low performing. There's one thing we found out that they have in common. Who can tell me? Yes? Oh, that is one of the things, absolutely. Have you read my books? No, you should have, yeah. But they're basic thinkers. Many of the traditional freshmen coming out, even adult learners, are basic thinkers. Did you know that? They've been taught to perform to test. They've been taught to repeat back what they've been told, and they will force you to. If you don't believe me, do a study session for a test and say, you can ask me anything you want to ask me. We're going to get ready for this test. What's the first 5 questions they ask you? What's going to be on the test? Is it true or false? You know, do we get extra credit? We've been taught to understand that that's exactly what schooling is. It's a basic rote process. The question I ask all my freshmen when they first come into the room for the very first day of class, I will say, how many of you are here to get knowledge? How many of them will raise their hands? Everybody. Yes, Dr. Thompson, I'm here to get knowledge. I said, great, you answered the question correctly, you get an A in my class, no matter what. You don't have to come back to class if you don't want to, but you get an A in my class because you answered it correctly. If you come back to class, we'll have a good time. But you don't have to, I'll give you an A. Toward the end of the class, I try to get them energized. Toward the end of the class, I will ask, now, I'm going to, you know how us professors do, we prepare for the next class like the day before. And I said, in order for me to prepare for the class, how many of you are coming back to class? Out of about 40, how many will raise their hand? They'll look at me kind of odd and say, well, did you say that if we don't come back to class, we get an A anyhow? I said, I did say that. I said, so how many of you are coming back? About 4 or 5 will raise their hands. And those are the 4 or 5 that realized I had just lied to them. I'm not giving them an A. But the idea that we've gotten knowledge mixed up even with grades, am I correct? It's not about thinking, it's not about learning, it's about false performance. Don't get me wrong, I don't know what else we do without grades, so I'm not giving us a hard time with grades. But awareness is the ability to understand how you can infuse at the basic level knowledge. Awareness is about, I hate to use this term, but I'll use it, it's about building your IQ. So if you're going to infuse diversity into your curriculum the first year, it needs to be about awareness. Don't take them farther than that because they can't get there yet. You understand what I mean? This is critical thinking. You cannot make someone be so self-actualized that their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, that they have a linkage with their history. You can't get them there that early. You'll lose them. And I'll go in greater detail about awareness in a second. So the first stage is awareness. It's about building your IQ, your knowledge base. That leads to acknowledgement and saying that whatever you believe about someone, based on skin color, social orientation, or whatever the case may be, whatever you believe about someone will have an effect on that person, either positive or negative. It will have an effect on that person. That's acknowledgement, is acknowledging that you have something to do with somebody else. And this is especially true if you have power and you're a faculty member. right? So awareness is about building your IQ, acknowledgement is about building your social intelligence, and knowing that your belief systems will have some effect. That leads to acceptance, and acceptance, no more and no less, you are what you eat. I can talk to you, if I get to know you, then we can have all kinds of conversations. Acceptance is about not being politically correct, but being correct. Normally, if I'm politically correct, I'm just lying to you about something. I don't necessarily believe it. Correctness is if I look at you and I said, have you been discriminated against? You say, I have been as a woman, I've been discriminated against. I look at you and I said, okay. And you say, well, you can't understand, you're not a woman. I may not be able to understand gender discrimination from the standpoint of patriarchy in this society and being a woman, but I can understand discrimination. I just have to be able to talk to you enough to find out what are those common variables, right? We call this empathy. Acceptance is about empathy. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about what you teach your kids. It's about how you pass this along. It's about what you read, what you believe. It's about what TV shows you watch to shape who you are. It's about all of that. Right? The idea that you cannot get to emotional intelligence until you first of all get to what? Social intelligence, and you can't get there until you actually build some knowledge base, right? Emotional intelligence is the strongest of the intelligences, and you know that for all you psychologists in the room. Action then is where it's coming. We can talk all day long about this and it'll sound good. You walk out of the room and you're going to say, he's either was a terrible speaker or a good speaker, he didn't challenge me, or he did, I didn't like what he had to say, or I loved it, but that doesn't mean that it means anything unless you're willing to put some of this stuff in action. Action is about how you look at your syllabus. Action is about how you look at your course. Action is about how you look at your pedagogical skills. Action is about how you look at those students in that room. Action is about not making excuses that you got 40 people in a room, you can't be culturally competent. Action is about taking steps that matter versus offering excuses that don't. Am I right? Do you believe that? Okay. That's my challenge to you. This is a continuous improvement model, and once you get to this point, you start all over again. It never ends. Isn't that cool? That's what the learning cycle is, isn't it? I talk about learning not just in college, but figuring out how to learn after you get out of college. I actually covered a lot of PowerPoints on that. Culture is what we talk about a lot. The President talked about the campus and so on, about, you know, with all due respect, that not just reporting numbers. And he's right. That's why we're changing the diversity policy at CPE. Been trying to for years, but now I'm going to. You know, and y'all are helping me. It's about looking at what are you doing and how are you doing it, and what, not just what the outcomes are with purely 1+, but what are the outcomes about infusing this at a cultural level, in the ideology, in the material processes. It is about having people to represent. Really it is. You can't discount that. But it's also about not just depending on the people of color or those quote unquote carrying a minority status to be able to carry the banner. Right? It's about more than that. And these are all the dimensions of culture. You know what they are. But climate versus culture. Climate matters. You can walk on a college campus, tell me if I'm wrong, you can walk on a college campus, and if you know anything about college campuses, and spend an hour on that campus and you'll get a good sense of what that campus is all about. Am I right or wrong? For those who've been on college campuses, I can tell you. Climate and culture aren't the same, but they're often used in the same manner. Climate has been defined as current perceptions, attitudes, and expectations that define the institution and its members. Culture refers to the deeply embedded patterns of values, beliefs, and assumptions. You look at what's happening in America now with law enforcement and the African American community. We have done a pretty good job of painting law enforcement with one big old brush, because a few people can represent. And that affects the climate of interaction between a law enforcement officer and a person, especially a male black person from the African American community. You are both walking in now because of the climate or the relationships that's perceived. You're both walking in with a greater heightened likelihood that something negative will happen. Did you know that? Whether that officer is a good officer or a bad officer, or whether that African American kid is a good kid or a bad kid. That's what you're walking into. What you have to do is look at the embedded structures of law enforcement, and some of you know my background, you know that's what I do. Look at the embedded structures. Are there embedded cultural items that keeps perpetuating this? If there is, then we have to change that in order to really be able to change the milieu or the climate. So objective and subjective is where we're at. Let me tell you what I do with kids that come in my class. I tell all the kids this, and they are kids. I don't care if they're 30, they're kids to me. If that sounds pejorative, I don't care. But they are kids. They come in, I tell them, I said, I want to know the difference between stupidity and ignorance. They said, okay, ignorance is you don't know and you don't know you don't know. I said, okay, that's good. What's stupidity? Well, that's a little bit harder for them. I said, stupidity is that you got a chance to know and don't take advantage of it. So I argue everybody has to have skin in the game. I don't care where you're coming from or your background. You got to have skin in the game. If you want to close gaps, 3 major things that you need to remember. You have to have high expectations, high rigor, and high input. Not everybody's coming from the same place. Some may need more than others. But you can't disregard rigor or expectations. Am I right? Skin in the game. Kids come to my class, I said, okay, if you come in, you may not know something. That's why you need to know how to ask questions. I want to teach you how to ask questions. That way you can find it out. Because what I know about success is 2 things I need to teach you. One is that I need to teach you how to recognize when you don't have something to be successful. And then number 2, how to go about finding it. People who are coming from more disenfranchised backgrounds don't know those 2 as well as those that aren't. I don't need to give it to you. I need to teach you how to find it. Just like that old saying, if I give you 1 fish, you'll eat how many times? If I teach you how to fish, you'll eat a lifetime. My job as a professor is to teach everybody how to fish. Some need more help than others. But everybody, I know that I'm talented enough to teach everybody how to fish better. What I can't do then is I cannot disregard the objective and the subjective. I can't just say things like, you come on in, do whatever you want to. I will say to them, if you come in, you go to the back of the room. I said, I'm a lazy guy. I only look halfway up, so if you really want a lot of knowledge, come up front. If you lay your head on my desk, I want to know what you're being. They'll look at me, stupid. I say, yes, you are. If you're texting in my class, what are you being? Stupid? Yeah. I want them to have skin in the game. But I want to make sure that I'm not biased. So objective is not being influenced by my own personal feelings, bias, or anything else. We know that we all carry bias, no matter how good we are. Even among those highly educated physicians, MBAs, PhDs, all kinds of stuff that I talked with at that medical conference, they still had bias. I could only take them so far. We all carry bias. We're not immune to bias. So we have to challenge our objectivity as well as our subjectivity. This is one of the biggest issues we still have in higher education. Gaps have been persistent because of these 2 issues. My argument is that faculty, Gesundheit, I don't even know what that means, because I didn't have German in my background. I'm Scottish. A few people didn't get that. Thank you for laughing. What do you see? What do you see? Come on, speak up. Who sees a horse? Raise your hand. Oh yeah, that's a horse. Good job. Yeah. Would everybody agree that's a horse? Which way is the horse head turning? Is he looking at us? Yes? How many of you think he's looking at us? No? How many thinks that it's looking over its head back at you? How many of you think the rear end is toward us? Really? Yeah. How many of you see a sunset? How many see a sunrise? What's happened well, everybody can agree there's a horse, right? That's why you don't ever rely on eyewitness testimony. What I'm telling you is we've gotten diversity. We have forgotten that we all see a horse. We've gotten lost in the other things that we can disagree on. You understand what I'm saying? The object of actually building competence is to get to a baseline where we all can start from and build on it. If you see a horse, you can. I argue this all the time. People say, I already buy into that. I said, yeah, many of you may be in a choir, but y'all are sucky at singing. Our job is to teach people how to sing well. Not just to say we're in a choir and leave it there. That's our baseline. We're in a choir. Let's figure out how to sing. Diversity is about learning how to sing, knowing that it benefits everybody, not just one particular group. So what is the causes of unconscious bias? How many of you knew this? I'll just give you an example. How many knew that the number of Americans over 6 feet tall is less than 15%? Yeah. Did you know that? How many of you know that percentage of corporate CEOs over 6 feet tall are 60%? Does that mean that tall people are smarter? I argue that that's the truth. What happens so often without us even thinking about it is that our bias can lead to big outcomes. We don't think that we do. There is a perception that taller people command better presence. Am I right? Tons of research has been done. Some of you know me well enough. I will not talk about this unless I can back it up. I will not talk about it unless it's been proven strategies. That's where we have failed. We've used opinions way too often. So what is diversity? It refers primarily to the difference among groups of people that together, though, makes up humanity. That's our starting point. We cannot have humanity unless we have diversity. We talk about those soft skills in which I fully disagree. All the business, we had a Student Success Summit. Anybody was there this week? Anybody learning? Wasn't it cool? Wasn't it good? Did you like Jose Bowen? Yeah, this was all about learning. We did this for faculty this time. It was cool. But what we do know is that humanity is the starting place where we need to go in order to talk about this. Did you know that those soft skills we talk about, every business are asking for those? Doesn't matter what kind of skills we teach them in our majors, they're all saying we are woefully under-preparing them to do, quote unquote, the soft skills. Well, I'm here to change those terms to necessary skills. Soft sounds weak. Necessary sounds like what they are, right? Your whole university is made up of diversity, just the way you structure things, am I right? You have student affairs, academic affairs, you have business majors, you have engineering majors, you have education majors, you have all kinds of people. Your arts and sciences, full of diversity. Your general ed, diversity. Diversity is a commitment to recognizing and appreciating the variety of characteristics that make up the individual. They are necessary skills, no matter how you shake it out. And I'll talk more about that in a second. These are the ways that I operationalize them. There's many other ways, but these are the ways that they actually exemplify itself in many of our universities and colleges around the country. I want to ask you to read it. You can buy one of my books and help my kids go to college. So how do you value diversity? It's a process that embraces the richness of that difference. Valuing recognizes that all groups have contributed to the American experience and that all contributions have given America its strength and edge. But it's more than just saying you believe it, it's a part of your action process. Why is it important? Research have demonstrated a link between interactions of students with a diverse group of peers and in the number of increased student outcomes that fall in the areas of intellectual and self-confidence, openness to diversity and challenge, critical thinking, leadership and cultural knowledge, moral reasoning, and development of pluralistic orientation. How long do I have? You have to give me, because I'll talk until I stop. So you better tell me when to stop.
How about we say 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock? Well, that's not enough time. Yeah, I'm joking.
I think that clock's not going to be set.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So what do we know about social collaboration and interaction? How many of you know that the first year of college is the year that students have the greatest opportunity of experiencing the largest amount of diversity in their entire life? How many of you know that? First year of college. First year of college. I will ask you and I will challenge you to find out how have we operationalized that into our university. Think about the missed opportunity. And what did I say earlier? If you have a chance to learn and don't, you don't have to remember. Think about that for a second. A particular form of interpersonal interaction that has been found to be strongly associated with improving the students' performance in college and their motivation to complete college: diversity. Think about that. There's been studies done. I won't read the studies to you. I'm happy to send them to you if you're interested. What they found out through massive amount of studies, that it consistently shows that we learn more from people who are different than us than from people who are like us. That sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's true. How well are we taking advantage of that? One of the things that I do, even in my graduate class, I will make all of my students, in every, I give it to them in every class, I will make them put down on paper, it gets them to look at themselves too, write down characteristics, demographics and otherwise, of the person who they think is exact opposite of them. Exact opposite of them. They will write lots of descriptions. Then I will ask a question: how many of you think a person like that exists on this campus? Every time they say, oh yeah, of course, I've seen them. Yeah, they exist. I said, this is what I want you to do, and I won't spend a lot of time with this, but I give them the criteria not to go out and make somebody mad, but I teach them how to do an interview skill, and I will say, find someone who you can do a 5-minute interview with, or longer, but at least 5 minutes. I want you to ask them these series of questions, and I give them a series of questions to ask. You know, where did they grow up? What kind of food did they like? Who did they play with? You know, what did they like to study or whatever, and, you know, those sorts of things. I said, find out someone, and then I said, I want you to write a critical 1-page paper to tell me what your thoughts were beforehand, why you picked them, and what they are now. This has never failed me once, and I've done it with I don't know how many students. I'm old, so you can imagine. At least multi-hundreds, thousands, I'm sure. Never failed that they come back and tell me what?
Misconceptions.
Yeah, that person was a lot more like them than they thought. Am I right? The similarities. If you want to really get to learning from differences, find out what we're all similar in first. Because if we find out that we have something in common, then we can find out about each other's differences, right? We can do that. We can have that conversation. We call it relationship. The idea that we get lost sometimes in that we don't learn from each other because we are afraid. Higher order thinking tells you or teaches you how to take advantage of stuff. So, strength and development of learning and thinking skills. We know that this interactions with people at a structured level that's different than you, that you learn from. Your thinking complexity has a huge impact on your thinking complexity. on your reflexive thinking, and on your critical thinking. We have not found anything stronger than that to increase critical thinking from the purest point of understanding. How many philosophers do I have in the room? Anybody in philosophy? We tend to look at critical I was going to give you a hard time. Since you're not here, I won't. I like giving people a hard time to their face. It's not fair if you don't do it that way. But we get lost, and when we think we're teaching critical thinking, we think we have to teach it from a textbook sort of viewpoint. Critical thinking is this internalization process, am I right? The ability to change the way you look at the world and evaluate it. Critical thinking is putting you in this box we have in college and teaching you how to roam around in it and evaluate all parts of it instead of just standing in one place. That's basic thinking. Critical thinking allows you to be able to ask questions to find out new knowledge, to evaluate and come up with a conclusion. Creative thinking is taking that knowledge and placing it outside that box in a wholly new different situation. That's what we're trying to do in college, is to teach people how to learn how to think and then apply that knowledge in the world that they go into. Problem solve, and so on. We say we want to teach our students to be global. There's no way you can gain a global perspective without understanding diversity. It's impossible. But it also promotes creative thinking. Experiencing diversity can enhance your ability to think creatively. It helps us to look at our blind spots. It helps us to be able to evaluate not only others, but ourselves and the pieces that we kind of float around in outside the school environment, even when we go home. It causes you to be able to question some of the things that you've learned throughout a lifetime that you don't like questioning. We get hassles all the time from different folks who say, well, my kids went off to college and they came back and they questioned whether or not the things I taught them were correct. Cool. Yeah, I want them to question. Even if they come up with the same conclusion, at least let them do it, right? I'm not saying don't teach your kid moral values. That's not what I mean. Or characters. I think you have to do that. But we know this already. Diversity also enhances career preparation and college success and career success. That's what employers are telling us that they don't have. And I want you to remember what I said earlier about those 4 elements. The first year of college should be about awareness. I know I don't have enough time to go into this. Second year of college should be about acknowledgement. How can you put courses into place or having seminars or whatever that you let your sophomores build off of that? We call it scaffolding. That's what you call your other stuff too, right? Third should be more about empathy. They cannot understand the Holocaust truly, or all the inputs that went into a Holocaust, unless they go through the other 2 stages first. Do you know that? It's impossible, because it's hard to generate in your mind, how could that many million people be killed for their religious and ethnic beliefs? That's hard to understand. And the only way you can do it is to kind of be empathetic, to truly believe it, to truly understand it. You can't understand slavery unless you first know how it took between 1620 and 1690 to really create slavery in a puritanical society of people that came here for religious freedom. You have to figure out how that happened. How you had to disenfranchise the population. You can't understand the disenfranchisement of African American men in this society until you first know what happened during slavery, after slavery, during Jim Crow laws, until you first know even how the Industrial Revolution took place and who were able to get the jobs of the $5 a day on the line. You can't understand gender discrimination unless you first know that women somehow were in the sweatshops with their children, and because laws took place to send them back home, that they created a $5 a day for white men to send women back home to do unpaid labor that wasn't as important. Am I right? All of this is more than just the richness of understanding who we are as people. It's how we interact as people even. Diversity stimulates social development. So a major goal of appreciating diversity is to promote the equitable treatment of all people and reduce prejudice or discrimination toward particular groups of people. We have to start with the baseline. There are truths. There are truths. One of the arguments that I offer is that in higher education, diversity comes in many forms. But we have to really address the things that smack us in the face at least first. It is about citizenship and leadership. Students, you should hope that they have this when they leave you. They should be able to acknowledge difference, they should be able to accommodate difference, and they should be able to cultivate difference. That's what you want them to do. That's what you want them to do with every competency that they have. Am I correct? You want them to be able to do that. If you don't have difference there, you want them to do those things. That's what you want them to have, no matter what discipline you're in. When they leave, if they do a capstone, that's what you're asking them to do. If they do an internship, that's what you're asking them to do. If they get to a senior thesis, that's what you're asking them to do. But we've got to move from this guilt trip philosophy. We've got to, and we've got to make it a learning philosophy. I can talk all day long how I was beaten up when I was first going to school, integrated into schools. I can talk all day long how my father was only paid 20 cents to the dollar. I can talk all day long about the times my house was set on fire by the pseudo Ku Klux Klan. They wore dirty sheets, you know. That doesn't give me an excuse not to be successful, nor you an excuse not to help me to be successful, right? We've got to take away the guilt trip in this conversation and understand exactly the power that we have of helping people to get to a better place. And it's not about political stuff, by the way. It really isn't. That's what gets me, is that we've gotten lost in whether it's a conservative or a liberal action, Democrat or Republican action. I mean, I hear these conversations, I promise you, they're all up there having drinks together while we're down here fighting. I did sound like a Marxist then. So it needs to be a learning experience and not just a guilt trip. I know Bonnie knows me well. She knows I'm not into political correctness, but I am into correctness. Am I right? I do want to know what I can do better. I do want to have the ability to tell people what I feel and learn from them, for them to tell me how they feel. And every once in a while it gets a little hairy because people aren't really used to that. People are used to political correctness or no correctness. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't give me the right to say whatever I want to say to anybody I want to say it. I don't mean that. But it is about how do we get people to a point of understanding where they're coming from. So diversity refers to a variation in a population based on a variety of characteristics. Competency refers to the ability to understand and respond effectively to a student need based on these variations. Diversity, then, is a feature of the population, and competency is a measure of effectiveness. So everybody knows that we're changing the diversity policy in this state to go toward the last piece. People say, well, how do we measure that? Well, I can show you how to measure that. It's not very hard. You all know how to measure that. You really do. How many of you don't know how to measure a competency? Now, we're going to help you because we know that these are things that people haven't been able to do or have been used to doing. But we need to move more about whether you have one more person than you had a year ago or a tenth of a person more, to the point of saying, what are you doing on your campuses? I can come to your classroom, and this is not about discipline either. I can take every single discipline at this university and show you how to infuse diversity in it and competency in it. Every single curriculum. There's no curriculum that is so standard and exclusive that can't be done. What do you see there? How many of you see a face? Who, raise your hand. What do you see?
The outline of the boxes.
Outline of a what? No. No, well, you may see that. I don't know. Yeah, you may have taken something before coming tonight. No. I'm joking. Yeah, people see different things. You see a fox's face? Where at?
If you look kind of diagonal, it looks like a shape of a fox. Just the head.
Yeah.
Got two lines.
So what do you see?
It looks to me like a cowhide stretched out.
Cowhide stretch out. People see that. Do you see something? How many of you see like a human face with a beard? Raise your hand. Did you see one? Look, you see that big white spot in the middle? Think of that as a chin or a mouth, and the nose above it, and it's surrounded by a beard. I can't do this exercise very well because you don't have it in front of you, which I apologize. Does anybody see a face? It's the stereotypical way that Jesus would look. You don't see it? If you, I wish they had it on paper. Do you see a face? Okay, you see, okay, take this spot here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notches over, and come straight down, just look on that side. You don't see it? Okay, this is not going to work for me today. Usually when, because you have to have it, and it's probably a bigger screen. Y'all are just blind. Usually when I put this up, about a third of the people in the room will quickly see the face. And then I usually have it on paper, and then or usually it's not that high either, but I have it on. You do? Yes. You see it? Yeah. It's clear in it. And once you see it, yeah.
I think you need a pointer.
I need a pointer. I don't have one. This doesn't have one on the end. I thought maybe it would.
I see it. His eyes are right there. So clear.
Maybe this does. No, that doesn't do it. Yeah, it does. You saw a little light up there just then? Yeah. You see my light? I want to trace it. Y'all looking at me? Look. Who else saw it?
North and South America.
Well, he's a dean. He's never going to see things right, you know? No. Do you see it? Who else saw it? I got 2 people. Can I get 3? You see it really well now, can't you? Can you believe you ever missed it now after you see it? Am I right? Once you see it, you can't.
It's very clear.
Yeah. Okay. I know she's going to make me stop in 15 minutes, but I'm going to do it one more time because this is it. Oh, why did I do that? I got some big old hands. Where's my little thing? There it is. Look, I'm going to try. This is going to be a good video, man. I apologize, but there you go. See, look, I'm tracing it. Trace the blackness there. No pun intended. Look. I didn't get anybody else, huh? Okay. I'll tell you the essence of this. Usually I show it about a third of the people get it quickly. Once they get it, they can't help but to see it. I then will go to a smaller one. I can put them in front of their face. The smaller one, I do it, I get about another third because they'll say, oh yeah, I see it now. And then they'll forever see it. I can never reach a third of the people. What I tell faculty is that this stuff This is what I know every time I teach it, not of you, of course, because I know you're better than this. But this is what I tell people. When I'm doing this, I know I've got a third of the people that's starting out with me. They're ready. You got a third of the people that are coming to your room, they're ready to learn from you. Everything you say, no matter how boring you are, they're going to listen, they're going to learn. Another third of the people, you have to do different techniques to get them there. But once you get them there, they're there. Another third of the people, no matter how hard you work, can't get them, can you? But that doesn't give you the excuse not to try to get them. This is what I think about here. It's easy to say, well, Thompson, you're a black man. Of course you're going to argue this stuff. But I don't do it from that standpoint. I may have gotten interested in it because of that, but this is about learning. This is about getting where we need to go and understanding that the only way we can do it is to look at multiple ways of trying to reach people. And you can't do that unless I learn from you. As a student, I need to know where you're coming from in order to reach you. I promise you, finding out for the first couple of 2 or 3 days of class just who they are will cause learning to increase in your classroom through the roof. How many would believe me? Through the roof. Without ever touching the book or whatever the case may be, through the roof. I like Jose and what he was saying about that. He doesn't talk about the syllabus. He'll send it to them and electronically and make them actually write something about it later on. Okay, I'm running out of time. This is where we want to go. I want you to think of this as a higher order cultural competence scale. There's a lot of room, just to let you know, I'm not crazy enough not to know, there's a lot of room between, down at the bottom of this, way down at the bottom of it is genocide. That's the lowest you can go. Right? Kind of like what Hitler did with the Jews. The lowest of the lower order cultural competence scale is killing people based on who they are or what they are. Trying to annihilate a human group. Highest point is cultural competence. Where you want your students to be after the first year is in these 2 marks. That's where you want your students to be. My argument is that every class should have a writing competency, should have a reading competency, should have a critical thinking competency, should have a cultural competency. I don't care what the class is. Because I think it'll teach you and help you to learn whatever you're doing. Where do you think most of your students are coming in? There's research on this, by the way, obviously. Where do you think most of your students are coming in? That's right. They're in the stereotyping and biased area. Even if they're used to diversity different than we are. They've always been around diverse people. That won't be strange, but they've never learned how to learn from them. They still carry a lot of baggage with it. Now, they don't look at it the same way as all of us old people used to look at it. I mean, I don't think of interracial dating in the same way we used to think of interracial dating as an example. That's not a big issue in many cases. But we're still having fraternities and other things do stuff. Not just fraternities, but across the board. Most people are going to come in there. I'm going to challenge you now to say this. Where are your faculty at? You don't have to answer that. But I want you to think about that. What we found out are some of the research that showed that when we get students in the freshman year, when we graduate them, that they increase their critical thinking ability about a whopping 4%. They may have learned more book stuff, but doesn't mean that they know how to use it as well, right? So we're higher order thinking. Where do you think I am, just as a guess? Now, these are harder as you move up, and it takes a lot of work to move up. Where do you think I am on this ladder? I'm going to ask you where you think you are too, but I'll let you answer that among yourselves. Where do you think I am? Cultural action. Who said that? That's exactly right. That's where I am. Now, that's where I am most of the time. Every once in a while, I'll fall way down here. As a human, you will not be perfect every time, in other words. It's not about where you're at all the time. It's where you spend most of your time at, or you try to spend most of your time. Am I correct? You will mess up in trying to do this. You will mess up. But your objective is to know when you do. That's cultural action, basically. And it takes a while. You cannot get students to this cultural acceptance. In my argument in college, that's where you want to get them to, close to that cultural acceptance, because you have to apply this stuff a long time ago to get a long time to get above that, right? You have to have some time on your side. You have to be able to experience different things. If you're interested, I'll send you this PowerPoint. So what can you do as a professor? I got 10 minutes, we'll go through fast. Set aside class time for students to work together. Do you know when students drop out of college for academic reason, only one thing they have in common? They studied alone. How many of you know that? How many of you know that if you set up groups where they can study together, not just group projects, study together, and that group is diverse, the actual learning experience goes straight up? Who knew that? Huge. One little thing you can do. Use other individuals as resources. You don't have to be the only expert connecting with people. I tell people you don't want to identify the only woman in class and say, what do women think about the world? That's not what you do. But you do set up people to learn from other people with different backgrounds. Never tolerate disrespect. In all my classes, I say, we're going to have a good time, we're going to challenge, we're going to question, but I can never disrespect you. You can't disrespect me, and you can't disrespect someone else. This class is about learning. We can ask questions, but never with disrespect. Allow students to share personal histories. We found that one of the biggest engagement strategies. I tell a lot of stories, not because I don't have other stuff I just love to give it, but I tell a lot of stories because it makes me what? Human to them. They can connect with stories, and then they'll tell stories. First 5 minutes of actually it's longer than that most of the time. When I first walk into a classroom, I ask the kids, what's going on in the world today? First class, no one will say anything. So I'll spend 5 minutes talking about what I read in the paper. I still read the paper, but now what I see over the internet, what was on Twitter, what was on Facebook or whatever. I don't have Facebook, but they do. The next class, I will say, what's going on in the world today? I'll have about 1 or 2 people. Dr. Thompson, I saw on today's show this. By the time I get to the 4th or 5th class, I can't get them to shut up. But I created 2 particular big items, but 3 things, but 2 big items. One is, I have them engaged in class. Students very rarely ever miss my class, and I'm not that good, I promise. I never took roll. They very rarely ever miss my class. If you want students to attend class, get them engaged in the learning process. That's number 1. And that's the impact you have as a faculty member, engaging students in and out of the classroom. Number 2, I got them to read stuff that they didn't even know they were reading. They were. Because I had them refer to what was going on in their world today to what they were reading, no matter what it was, whether I was teaching doctoral students in education or whether or not I was teaching statistics. I asked them to think about what they saw in the world today or read in the world today to the book. So I got them to read stuff they were supposed to and read stuff they didn't even have to read. I don't give extra credit, I will tell you, but I know some of you do, so that's why I put it up. But I require in every class, I don't care what class I'm teaching or what level of class, that they go to a couple of co-curricular items on campus. Could be a concert, could be a play, I don't care. But it's not just going to them that I give them credit for, is they have to write me a critical essay about what came out of that. Because I want them to not just be able to say that I saw something, I want them to be able to see it and apply it and think about it, right? You can specify particular items that you want to come out of your class. That increases cultural competence, such as attitudinal outcomes. You can ask particular items or particular questions or essay questions or other items. Behavioral outcomes. Cognitive outcomes. There's all kinds of learning learning outcomes you can use. I'll get it out sooner or later. I do a lot of 1-minute papers. I don't grade on grammar for a while, but after a while I kind of hint and give them stuff, but I do a lot of 1-minute papers. And I get students to read that way, to have them respond in class. I create cognitive disequilibrium in my practices in the classroom. I will do a debate in my class, it depends on the class, and I will try to find out what their belief systems are, and I'll make them take just the opposite of that and work in groups to go and do research and find out and present the opposite of their belief system. It's amazing how much that has worked. Also raise questions from all different sides that can have multiple perspectives. There's a lot of right answers, by the way, to a lot of things. Some things, mutual exclusive, right or wrong, but many questions are kind of left up to an ethical scenario or a dilemma. I do invite disagreement. I invite guest speakers. I'll do a TV program or a YouTube video. All these things can point out, and I can do YouTube videos of someone of a different background and have them analyze it. There's all kinds of ways you can get this in here. Devil's advocate. Do reverse thinking, as I said earlier. And I'm sorry, I only have you'll give me 5 minutes. I only have 3 left, right? But I want to be able to answer any questions that you may have or pose any sort of comment that you may want to pose. Yes, sir.
What you're saying about cultural competence and maybe how we as institutions will be evaluated seems so counterintuitive to what's really going on in accountability in higher education.
Right.
And it seems to me the message that you're talking about, one of the things that we have to have is a disposition quality where we desire to have trust. And it seems like so much of this is breaking down in terms of the way we're being held accountable. And it's sort of a feeling like we're not trusted. And I'm talking to someone I think is probably advocating for a different way of looking at how we go about looking at a university when I hear you talk this way. So is this ringing true?
It's ringing true to me. I won't lie to you. And if you know anything about me, Bonnie does. Bonnie knows that I argue this. It's just like assessment. I think we have to get to authentic assessment. I have to think we need to talk about quality a lot more. We're getting and I'm a quantoid. I was trained as a statistician. But we have to talk about, if we say that we have quality programs, we need to figure out how to talk about the quality of our programs. Am I right? Absolutely. If we're going to have real assessment, we need to have authentic assessment, not some artificial means. So absolutely, I believe this. I cannot think of anything more authentic than working with people of different backgrounds to learn from one another in a community. And that's just not a sociologist speaking, by the way. I can, once again, I hope I give you a lot more research, if you don't believe me, to show that what we need to get to, if we're really going, whether fair or not, we've got to our society in almost every way of being able to be judged on how many courses we teach versus the quality of courses that we teach. And I keep on going forever in that conversation, but you know where I'm going.
We're in
right.
Quality.
Yeah.
And so again, when I hear all that, I said that energizes us, but so much of what we have, and I'm a curriculum development guy, it is pushing us to a reductionist perspective. And it's just absolutely the opposite direction we need to go in terms of the leadership we need to help us have a much more expansive curricular experience at the university.
Well, absolutely. I think the more reductionist we get, the more we become reductionist. In all that we do. The more, I'm a curriculum guy too. I want quality in my curriculum. I'd rather teach someone a fourth of a book at a very deep level than be able to teach all of the book on a skimming level. Depth has to become a part of our higher education mentality again, in my mind. I do believe that. I believe, but I'm going to tell you something else I believe. It may sound reductionist, but my argument also is that if you give somebody 150 choices, they may not ever be able to choose the thing that they really want to do at a deep level and really buy into the relationships they need to buy into with folks they need to do to get there, whether it's faculty or staff. It's kind of like a menu. If you go to a restaurant and you have 50 items on the menu, I promise you it'll take you forever to decide. When you do decide, you wish you had chosen something else. And you never were able to enjoy that food because you were questioning whether or not you should have gotten it. You want to bet me? Try it if you don't believe me. If you have fewer things on the menu, I promise you, you will know what you want and it'll be the best thing you've ever eaten. Am I right? Try it. This is where I'm going. The idea that to try to be all things, I think breadth is good. I'm not saying it's not. But I think in higher education, we have to go deeper. We have to be able to look at what we do and be able to authentically say, are we really doing this? Are we really getting into quality? Are we using things where we can check off boxes to kind of move along? Are we really getting into quality? Every one of you in this room, you can challenge me on this, but every one of you know when you see something that's good or when something is good. I promise you. Am I right? You do know. When you're building curriculum, you will know if you got out of the rote way of, we all build curriculum, so I know we can easily just start checking off, say, well, I know I need this outcome, this outcome, this outcome. But you know as well as I do, if you're able to take 1 or 2 or 3 outcomes and go deep with someone, they will be able to get the other outcomes. A lot easier than actually doing something at a skimming level. Anyway, but I don't disagree with you, I'm afraid. Yeah. Other questions? None? Thank you all so much for the invitation. It's great being at Murray. I appreciate you.